So, welcome to Parashat Miketz, the deep dive on the looking at the parasha, and I'm delighted to be have my guest here tonight is Rabbi Tilles, who is the co-founder of Ascent. You might have heard of them. Ascent is a magnificent organization in Tzfat, one of the very first who was set up, and we're going to hear about what they do. But why don't we start with that? What year did you co-found Ascent?
1983.
83. And what would you say would be like the key highlights in your journey from 83 when, Tzfat was a tiny village then, till now? What would you say were your key?
Well, it wasn't so much that Tsfat was a tiny village, but Ascent was a very, very tiny operation. Basically, it was like virtual reality. We didn't have a place. We were doing it out of our homes, or we were schnorring places from the yeshiva on vacation, Machon Alta on vacation. Now we own 2 hotels.
Amazing.
We don't even rent them. We own 2 hotels, and we have huge groups from the army. This is also a sign of truth. The army came to us and asked us to do Jewish identity programs with the soldiers.
Right.
And so it's a huge operation. Probably one of the largest kiruv operations in the world. But
amazing. How many people come through Ascent a year?
I just got the latest statistics that for the first 10 months of 2022, there were 40,000.
Amazing.
Yeah.
For the first 10 months, wow.
And that's the real statistics. If you ask the fundraising departments, it's more, but this you can rely on.
Very good, very good. Well, I'm absolutely delighted you're here, and I have to say a big thanks to Rabbi Tilles because he came in at very short notice. We were originally going to be interviewing your other co-founder, Rabbi Leiter, but he got stuck in Jerusalem, and so thank you for stepping in last minute.
My pleasure. The best pleasure is I got to meet Shlomo Godsi.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. So let me ask you this: what does Parasha Miketz? What's your connection with the parasha?
Was a special. In addition to Ascent, I taught Chumash for many years at Machon Alta. And the saga of Yosef and his brothers was something I did about every 3 years. So I've been through it many times.
Wow.
And when you teach, even at the most basic level, so you still have to do research at a more advanced level that you're to be on top of it. And I found this amazing thing between Rashi and Ramban. Can I read the verse? When the brothers first come down to Egypt, and they're brought to Yosef because he's the prime minister,
right,
and the minister of agriculture.
Right.
So and it says Vayakir Yosef et Achav. Yosef recognized his brothers. V'heim lo hikiruhu, but they didn't recognize him. V'yizkor Yosef es chalomos, and Yosef remembered the dreams asher chalam lahem, that he dreamed on them. He remembered the dreams that he dreamed on them, and he spoke to them very harshly. You're spies. You're you're seeking out our vulnerable places for an invasion, etc., etc. And what does this mean? What's the connection between he recognizes them and he speaks like that to them? So Rashi says about the dreams, Asher Chalam Alehem, that he dreamed on them, Alehem, on them, V'yada she's kaimu, and he knew, he realized that they had been fulfilled. It had been fulfilled. I looked this up in the Ramban, and the Rambam says, Alehem, he dreamed on them, V'yada shalom is kaimu.
Wow, complete opposite.
That they weren't fulfilled.
It sounds that the Ramban is right because the father and the mother didn't come yet. So,
well, right, but that's the second dream. It was the dreams have to be fulfilled in order. That was the chiddush.
But even Benjamin wasn't there, so it was only 10.
Right, but to get the first dream to be fulfilled, without the second dream being before the first dream, Yaakov can't come down with Benjamin. For Yosef. And that's why, according to the Rambam, you get involved in this whole manipulation to get Benjamin without Yaakov.
Oh, so that the first dream can come out true,
right?
With the 11 brothers, and then Yaakov's dream, the dream with Yaakov being
will also be fulfilled.
Who says that?
That's the Ramban.
Amazing. I love it.
And so that's the idea of. But look. But Yosef had this dream which he understood was divine. It was a real thing from Hashem.
Right.
So what do you have to do it for? He knows it's going to happen.
Right.
But it's because he knew that the dream was real, was truth. He felt he had to help. He had to be part of its fulfillment. Otherwise, why was he sent to dream?
Amazing.
So that's why I always, in connection with the topic of having to do something, having to make a vessel for God's in this case not so much God's blessings to be fulfilled, but for God's messages, God's prophecies to be fulfilled. So this is what the very intricate, complex plan he got started on.
And it is so complex. I mean, one of the things that we discovered in the deep dive with the Alshech was that he was saying that really Yosef was supposed to be in jail for 10 years because of the 10 drops of semen that came out from his fingers at the time of Potiphar's wife's approach to him, and that he stayed another 2 years because he asked the butler twice. He said, "Remember me twice." Had he said once, it would have been okay, but twice, no, it's too much. I mean, obviously he's in a different madriga, but the question I have, and perhaps you can enlighten us, to what extent do we have to rely on our own hishtadlut versus relying on God? Could you, I mean, I'm sure there's a range and it depends on the madriga of each person, but generally, what advice can you give people who are grappling with this?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's a little bit contradictory. I mean, we all have to deal with this. It says it on Rosh Hashanah, Parnasa, which is what everybody's most interested in. It says on Rosh Hashanah, your Parnasa is decided for the whole year. So nobody has to work. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, we understand that we do have to work. But at the same time that we're working, we have to understand it's not our work that brings the blessing for Parnasa. It's Hashem that brings the blessing for Parnasa. Or to put it in other words, it's not enough to just work, but you also have to pray. But you can't. But what I learned from this parsha in many cases is that if somebody has a dream and he believes it's real, God told him you're going to double your income this year. So it doesn't necessarily. You have a choice. You can, God promised it has to be. So you can sit back, or you can say, I have to work harder, because he told me everything's going to double. But you have to remember that Hashem is in charge. So
if we were to put numbers in it, I mean, I'm an engineer by training, so let's put numbers to it. If between 1 and 100, what percentage is our hishtadlut and what percentage is Hashem doing His magic?
Before you interrupted me, I was going to give an example of that. The famous Baal Shem Tov story is that he was in a situation where he needed some help in material matters, and he had some of his students with him. So he went to the house of this rich man. He knocked on the window, and then he left. And afterwards they asked what's going on, and we said we needed help. And for me, that's enough ishtadlus. So the answer is it's not the same for everybody.
It's not the same, right?
It's not the same for everybody, and I don't know how to tell how much it is for each person.
No, I was going to say, is there a general guidelines, for what we should aim to be?
Well, when the Lubavitcher Rebbe talks about it, he makes it clear that you have to do whatever you can do, but not that you should let it interfere with your study of Torah and observance of mitzvahs, because again, the most important part is Hashem's ishtadlus. So you have to be careful about that.
Right. So let's talk.
On the other hand, the Rebbe gives business advice to people also.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about dreams, because these whole parashas are about dreams and the importance of dreams. And We know that the dreams come from the. Is it the right brain? Is it the right brain that?
I think left brain.
Is
Right
it
brain is the rational brain, the
right
logical brain.
It's one of the brains.
We just had a lecture from Rabbi Jacobson, Y.Y. Jacobson, and he spoke about the different parts of the brain.
So it comes from one part of the brain, and the other part of the brain is all about logic and reality.
Yeah.
And it's being able to hold those two ideas together that is crucial, isn't it? The fact that you have to hold on to your dream, and at the same time you have to live in this world which has real issues and real reality, but they might be completely contrary to the dream, as we see with Yosef, So what advice can you give us to balance our dreams with our reality?
Well, we have to deal with the fact that like it says in Gemara Brachos, that most dreams are silly, or even here, a lot of the complications with the dreams in these parshas is because Yaakov accepted the principle. It says in the Gemara, there's no such thing as a dream, even a real dream, without something that's silly. Or in fact, the Gemara says without something that's sheker. The example was that part of Yosef's dream was the moon coming on with the sun, meaning his mother, and she was long ago passed away. So, sorry, I lost the thread.
So how do we manage this dichotomy between...
Oh yeah, so we have to understand that you have a dream. You don't know for sure that this is sent from heaven. Usually it isn't. And the Gemara says, what do you dream about? You dream about what you thought about during the day. That's what you dream about at night. It's like really very pure people that who are pure during the day, so they get pure dreams. There's more than one source of dreams, heavenly sources of dreams, and that's what Rabbi Chaim Vital warned us about. And this, he was talking 450 years ago. He said, in our generation already, we're not so pure. So when we have dreams, when we're trying to meditate to reach certain levels, the level we reach is according to the root of our soul. And you got to be careful. If you're not so pure, you're going to get in contact with the places that aren't so pure, that aren't necessarily pure and honest places. And now we're many years later, so it's not a good idea to rely on one's dreams. Unless it's like when the dreams keep getting repeated, then that's a warning sign or a heads up that maybe there's something there. Recurring dreams. But there is another lesson here in this parsha about the most amazing thing about that. The Gemara says the dream follows the interpretation, like we saw with Yosef interpreting their dreams. Worked out well. Worked out well for the baker. There's a midrash that says that Yosef really didn't like the baker. And then when he gave him a negative interpretation. In other words, the dream is flexible and it goes according to the interpretation. And Yosef was careful not to say an interpretation of his dream. I mean, he probably thought it. But who said, be king over your brothers? Because it was the brothers that said it. What? Right. Ours borrowed down to yours. You're going to be a king over us? Right. And who said the interpretation for the second dream? Yaakov said it. Said, what? Your father and your mother and your brothers are going to come? Yosef didn't say it. So there is that principle. When you have a dream and you think it's the real thing, you're supposed to go and ask for an interpretation. But be careful who you ask. Yes, exactly. But there's more important in terms of when people have a bad dream or a nightmare that really disturbs them, and especially if it repeats. It's supposed to go to 3 people, and you tell them that, I don't know if you have to really tell them all the details, but you tell them in general about the bad dream, and they say, Chalom Tov, Chalom Shalom, 3 times, the basin of 3. Right. And so that means that doesn't say, trying to put a spin on it, that makes it positive. Amazing. Yeah.
But let me ask you this, when you started Ascent, did you dream that it could become what it is now?
No.
In your wildest dreams?
My wildest dreams, no.
So how?
We were making. We had nothing. we couldn't make a seminar more than once every 2 months because it was just too difficult to organize all the physical aspects of it. You know, the food and the lodging and the space to have classes and stuff. We were doing, you know, we were limited to about 5 programs a year. Till after the first year, Rabbi Shaul Leiter took on himself that he would try to raise the money that we could have a place of our own, and we were able to rent a small place. I wouldn't even say that we couldn't possibly imagine this. I would say we didn't even want this, really. We were learning in Kollel, the three of us. We were learning in Kollel, and we wanted to do something useful. We figured we'd learn half a day in Kollel, and half a day we would do this.
The part-time job.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Okay, so let's move on to Parasha, and the incredible lesson I see going right through the Parasha of Miketz, through the Alshech, is the idea of midah keneged midah.
Yeah.
Everything is precisely engineered to bring this out. And I just wondered what your thoughts are on this idea, because I think I was saying in the podcast that I think the reason why we have these beautiful stories is not there's only 3 halachot in the whole of the Sefer Bereshit, so it must be that Hashem wants to show us how He operates the world, and so this is one way He operates the world, midah keneged midah. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd push it a little further. According to Kabbalah and Chassidut, the only way really to connect with God is through Torah, because God incorporates His will and wisdom in the Torah. So, in other words, we don't just learn from the Torah about midah keneged midah. We learn everything. That's why for example, that's why there's so many halachas. When we study them, even though we know it's not going to happen. You know, the rebellious son at exactly 12 years of age, he eats drinks a barrel of wine and eats a whole animal or whatever. These things are never going to happen. But we learn from the study of it. God says, if such a thing were to happen, this is what you should do. So we're learning more about how God thinks. I agree with you. Midah keneged midah is very one of the most important things we learn in terms of the way God works. But there's other things to learn also.
So just let's concentrate a little bit about that. How do you think that manifests in our lives today? Midah keneged midah.
The Baal Shem Tov says that everything that happens, it's supposed to happen. God's in charge of it happening. So it says you have to be aware when things happen. Think about, why is this happening to me? You know, he gave a famous example. He gave an example on himself, a very strange thing. He was walking along with his students after Shabbos morning prayers, and they came across a Jew who was smoking. And he didn't get engaged with him, but the Baal Shem expressed immediately to his students his great concern. Why did I have to see this? Why is God showing me this? A Jew smoking on Shabbos. And it took him a day or two to figure it out. And finally figured out because he was in some synagogue and somebody spoke disrespectfully about the rabbi. And the Baal Shem Tov didn't object. He didn't stand up for the rabbi. So that means he felt he was to a certain extent guilty of not honoring the rabbi properly. And the Torah scholars are considered like Shabbos, and so that's why he saw a violation of Shabbos. Now that's very extreme, but the point is that, you know, it's always there for a lesson for us. When something unusual, not the usual, happens, there must be a reason.
So let's talk about that, because one of the things that the Alshech says, which was really fascinating for me, is that the way Yosef dealt with his brothers, he oscillated between giving them extreme fear and putting them at ease. Always fear and ease. And I'm trying to think to myself, why is that the case? And it's clear from his interpretation that when the brothers were in fear, they immediately looked inwards and said, why is this happening to me, like you said, and began to confess. But the minute that pressure was off, all of a sudden the self-justification came back in, and oh, it wasn't so bad, you know.
Right.
So I was wondering, you know, is that a general reality in our lives today that we almost, unfortunately, need that pressure, that uncomfortableness to force us to look inwards, because otherwise human nature is just to self-justify everything.
Yes, I agree with you, and it's stated clearly in the Gemara with a cute expression in connection with in Parshas Mitzorah about when somebody has sarat, that skin disease from doing bad things, that the person is not considered free of it until the Kohen comes and looks at it and says,
yes.
Tahor.
Yes.
What if the Kohen has it himself?
Oh.
He's not allowed to judge himself.
Right.
Because it says a person sees the problems of everybody except himself. the brothers were willing to admit to a certain amount, and Reuven tried to not let them get away with it.
Right.
That helped, but that's natural to judge yourself favorably, and judge yourself favorably. So I think it was in one of the Chabad Rebbeim, when he was a child, asked his father, who was the Rebbe at the time, why do people have two eyes?
Yeah.
And his father told him, you have the right eye to judge people with kindness favorably, and you have the left eye to judge yourself strictly.
I like that.
So there are people that most people find even that right eye idea difficult to judge everybody favorably, but almost nobody.
But I suggested in the podcast that every energy you give out to the universe comes back to you. So, for example, if you bless somebody, that blessing will come back to you. If God forbid you curse somebody, that cursing will come back. If you judge somebody negatively, that's exactly how God will judge you.
Right.
Have you got anything else to add to that kind of reality?
The problem in discussing things with me is that for each of these things I have a story. I mean,
I love your stories.
Suppressing myself, but
no, please.
I would like to mention that I have a weekly email list for stories, considered Kabbalah stories, and this I've now passed 1,300 weeks of them.
Wow!
And you can go to the Ascent site if you want to join, and also you can find there. When Corona started and Malav Malkas at Ascent stopped, so I started with Saturday night stories, an audio story and a video story.
Wow!
And you can find out how to join that on Ascent also, or you can get in touch with me about it. What was the last one that I was saying?
I was so engrossed with what you were saying, I forgot myself. Do you remember, Robertson, what we were just asking?
Oh, about judging oneself, was it?
Yes. Oh, that's right.
About everything comes back.
Everything goes back. Everything you give out in the universe comes back.
So this
it's like a boomerang.
This is one of my favorite stories.
Go on.
It was a wealthy businessman that lived in the town of Reb Zusha. Everybody knows about Reb Zusha, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every time before he would set out for some important business deal, he would go to Reb Zusha to get a bracha. And it always worked, and things were working very well for him. Then one time he came to get a bracha from Reb Zusha, but it was Mrs. Rabbi Zusha that answered the door and told him that the Rebbe's not in town now. He said, where did he go? So, you know this?
Yeah.
He said he went to Mezrich to see the Rebbe, referring to the Maggid of Mezrich. And the Rebbe said, what? He's the Rebbe. Zusha's the Rebbe. What do you mean he went to see the Rebbe? So she said, the Maggid of Mezrich, that's my husband's Rebbe. How can it be that he has a Rebbe? I don't understand. So he left, and he started to think about it, and he said, well, if I get blessings from Zusha, and they work, so how much better will it be if I get blessings from his Rebbe, the Rebbe, right? So he went to the Maggid, tried to make friends with him, and whatever, and asked him for a blessing. And he did it several times, and each time it didn't work out well at all for him, until he was practically bankrupt. So he understood by then that the problem came from switching rebbes, and he went to Rabbi Zusha and he asked for an explanation.
Mm.
So listen to this explanation from Rabbi Zusha. Rabbi Zusha said, "Look, the whole time you were coming to me as your rebbe, as a person that can really help you, and so heaven looked down upon him and said, look how easygoing this guy is. He's even ready to accept Zusha as a rebbe, and let's let him have the bracha. But when you decided to be judgmental, who's the real rebbe, who's the better rebbe, who's not the better rebbe, so then heaven decided to be judgmental on you and see if you deserve the blessing or not."
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted just to turn, we've only got a few minutes left. I wanted to turn to another real issue, factor that we picked up, and that is that, the brothers went in trying to find their Yosef, and they went through 10 stations, and then they were found in the red light district, and they had to explain all of this behavior to Yosef as a viceroy, because they said, listen, if you're spies, why are you spies? Because spies, if you're not spies, why did you go through 10 different gates?
Yeah, you told me you're brothers.
Exactly. So then they said, oh, well, we're all brothers from one man. We didn't want to have a Yetzer to all go through the same gate. Fine. He said, but why are you in the red light district? If you said to me you came here just for the food. People who come for the food don't spend 3 days in the red light district. And then they're forced to tell them about, Benjamin and Yosef. They're looking for Yosef, and then they just dig themselves into a deeper and deeper hole. And it's amazing. I was saying in the podcast how much energy we have to consume to prop up a facade. And isn't it just easier just to be ourselves and just not try to cover up things? What's your thoughts on that?
I've seen it with somebody that I'm very close with, that when you lie a lot, it's very difficult to keep track of it.
That's right.
and yet, and you usually mess yourself up. It falls apart when you start contradicting yourself, because you can't possibly keep track of what you said. When you tell the truth, you don't have to worry about what did you say the last time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Any good stories about that?
I can't think of one offhand. I don't know. I'm sure there is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: is there anything that really shouts out at you from the parasha that you would love to share with us?
I gave you my favorite favorite vort there. I guess that's not so personal. But I think that one of the merits Yosef had tzaddik. I mean, the Torah tells us all the brothers were tzaddikim, and certainly Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov were tzaddikim, and certainly Moshe was a tzaddik, etc. But there's only one person who's called tzaddik. Yosef a tzaddik is called a tzaddik. Why? Because there's a certain sense in which he. Why? Because he put himself in a much more difficult situation. Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, and Moshe were shepherds. They by themselves in seclusion in a rural area, no red light district, right? And no trade food because they didn't go anywhere. So, but Yosef, he was in the middle of
Egypt,
in the middle of the palace, etc. Some unfortunately say, that's in our parsha. That's why the brothers didn't recognize him. I mean, Rashi brings this idea that they didn't recognize him because now he had a beard. He was too young to have a beard when he left. He had a beard. Well, come on.
I agree with you.
Right. But so he refers to something else. They didn't recognize him because they couldn't recognize him because they couldn't conceive that could possibly be Yosef.
Right. Because they said they sold him as a slave to Egypt, Dafka Egypt, because it was known, a law, that anybody that is a slave in Egypt can never go up to become a king.
And even if he had somehow escaped from slavery, how could he possibly be, even, let me say it in an extreme way, even if he escaped from slavery and was living his life as 100% from Yid. So that contradicts being in the palace and being next to the prime minister, second to the king, and being involved all day in government affairs and politics. I mean, who ever heard of how could a tzaddik be in politics? So they couldn't, if they had thought about it, could this guy be Yosef? So they probably could have recognized him. It seems that Benjamin did, or Benjamin somehow figured it out along the
Really?
way. But, yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
When Joseph sat down with him, said, you're the son of, you're the son of.
Beni, be graceful. May God give you grace.
Yeah, and he made certain comparisons between them, and he got very emotional.
Yeah.
So there's a medrash that says that Benjamin knew, but he said if he's not telling, I'm not going to tell.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And as the last question, because we've only got a few more minutes, what does the Alshech's Torah? How do you relate to the Alshech?
Tell a short personal story. At the Seder table, the Maggid, the part of telling the story, starts with a verse from Kitsovo. Arami avad alaviv hu yarad Mitzrayim. Right, the deceiver, the Arami, the person from Aram, the Syrian, he tried to do a number on my father, and so he went down to Egypt. The Arami being Lavan Arami, but Aram means also being deceptive. The deceiver tried to get my friend. So what was it that Lavan was trying to do to Yaakov? He wasn't trying to kill him. He was trying to, the sons are my sons, the daughters are my sons, everything you have is mine. He was trying to assimilate him. He wanted him to take Lavan's values. And down through the ages, we've always understood that Lavan represents the force of assimilation. Calls himself Lavan, the white. He's the exact opposite of the white, but that, he tries to sneak things in. So as in reaction to this, to save the situation, Yaakov goes down to Egypt. What today do we say is the answer to Jews about how to get not get assimilated? Come to Eretz Israel. Come to the Jewish place.
Right.
You don't try to fight assimilation by going to Egypt, the filthiest place in the world, the most immoral place in the world.
Yeah.
And anyway, that Yaakov did that. Where did he go from Lavan?
Not only Yaakov did that, but God maneuvered everything to make that happen.
Yeah. And where was it that Yaakov went when he left Lavan? He went to Israel. He came back to his father. Right. So what is the Haggadah trying to say, and what is the verse trying to say when it says that because of Lavan, Yaakov went down to Egypt? So I have a collection of Haggadahs. Nobody asked that question. I went around. It took me a few years. I went around Tsfat asking all the Chachamim. Nobody even tried to answer. Nobody had any idea. And I looked in the Alshech. He takes it on directly. Wow. And listen to this answer. He said, Lavan deceived Yaakov. Lavan is a deceiver. And because of his deceiving, Yaakov went down to Egypt. That he switched Leah and Rachel.
Right.
So if he hadn't switched Leah and Rachel, if Yaakov had married Rachel first, Yosef would have been the Bechor.
That's right. If
Yosef had been the Bechor and Yaakov favored him, it would have been no big deal. Everybody knows that the parents favor the firstborn. Especially in a Jewish situation, the firstborn is considered special.
He gets double the
everything. So they wouldn't have been, or maybe they would have been jealous, but they never would have been jealous to that extent. So because of Lavan switching, and then so Joseph got sold down to Egypt, and then Yaakov had to come find him in Egypt.
Amazing.
So ever since then, the Alshech is my go-to
when you get stuck.
Yeah. And so I went to see, when you called me, so I went to see what the Alshech says on this thing.
Yeah.
And he starts on the same path as the Ramban, that for different reasons, but that Yosef was very focused on the first dream. But he takes it to a different place. It doesn't really deal with.
Well,
the
all I
question.
can say is that I absolutely love my special time with the Alshech. I sit down in the Alshech shul, learning. It's fine, learning his Torah, and it's just such a thrill for me. It's almost like, because the Torah is so sparse in its description. There's so many things missing. That's why we need the midrashim to explain things. But he puts everything together in such a way that that's what happened. That's why it happened. And it all makes sense. After you read the Alshech, it all makes sense, and that's what I love about it.
Look, we learned that in his time, on Shabbos afternoon, when the Rav has to give a drasha, so they all had yeshivas and shuls, but the Yeri went to the shul of the Alshech, the Beit Yosef Kaira went to the shul of the Alshech. Everybody understood that he was the man for in terms of drasha on the Torah. We're Jewish, so why shouldn't we take that from?
So I want to thank you really very much for this beautiful opportunity to discuss Miketz. I really enjoyed it, and I want to give you a bracha that you should continue for another 1,000 episodes of your emailing of stories.
Amen, that's a good one.
Because stories touch people's heart in a way that many other mediums don't.
Right.
So, B'ezrat Hashem, and thank you for stepping in at the last minute, and
anytime.
hope you guys enjoyed it, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys next week for this mammoth collision or confrontation, between the lion and the ox. So until next week, take care, and we're looking forward to seeing you then. Thank you.